Hello everyone, welcome back to Luke's Movie Talk. We'll go over some of the most recent movies I've been watching. And for this video I'll be looking at the new stop motion animation movie Pinocchio by Guillermo Del Toro that just released on Netflix. Before I get into that, I uploaded a review for Violet Night, so if you're interested, go give that a watch. And make sure to like and subscribe to keep up to date with all future episodes. Okay, so let's get into some of the plot of Guillermo Del Toro's Pinocchio. So this pretty much follows the basic plot of the Disney one as well as the original Pinocchio story, I believe. And it starts off with Geppetto in World War One, and he loses his son Carlo. And then we skip around time, and we meet Geppetto later in life, and he's really sad, and he basically builds Pinocchio out of a tree that he and Carlo planted. And he builds Pinocchio. Pinocchio comes to life. Geppetto can't really accept him because he's obviously a sentient puppet. The whole town doesn't accept him. He gets carted off to the marionette circus. He goes there for a while. The main section of the plot is set in the World War II era Italy, so it's very fascist. There's a lot of Nazi saluting and all of that stuff. And Pinocchio ends up being put into a youth camp, which I did not expect to see. We see Pinocchio go out to sea to try and rescue Geppetto at one point. And it basically follows the basics of the story of Pinocchio that you remember, but just a bit different, a bit of Del Toro's taste of a bit of darker storytelling. But overall, it's a great retelling of this story, but just different enough that it brings you back in for something different than the usual thing you would expect. But overall, I love this film. It was so different, but the same. It's just the way that it was told in the use of stop motion. It made it feel so much different and new, which I loved. As I said, the stop motion was flawless, and you would think it was regular animation. It was so smooth. A lot of the older stop motion, you could notice almost like robotic movements, but this, it's like flawless. It flows perfectly, and you would never imagine it was stop motion unless you knew, and it's just that good. I love the character designs. Geppetto and his big, huge white beard was great. I love Pinocchio's unusual look, because in a lot of other retellings of Pinocchio, he's got clothes on, he's all painted up, he's got the human look, but for this one he's basically just a wooden figure, and he's got no clothes, he's got no paint, he's just basically the wooden outline of a marionette. And it was a nicer thing to see because it wasn't the usual thing. It was very different, very Guillermo del Toro. Sebastian the cricket was great. I loved his design. I loved the blue hue his scales gave off. Geppetto, as I said, Count Volpe, he's such an odd character. He was the host of the circus and the marionette show. He's got a huge nose, he's got really spiked hair, he's very odd. The spirits, the wood spirit that brought Pinocchio to life, and Death, they were so Guillermo del Toro with the eyes on the wings. It very much reminded me of the angel in Hellboy 2, and it was so cool. I love the blue hue they gave off, and not like white bright light of angelic, but a calming blue light. It's very cool. And then, as I mentioned, Pinocchio, his design was just so cool and different. The voice cast did an amazing job. Man, as the energetic and excitable Pinocchio, was very good. He gave off this feeling of a child that's literally come into the world and is experiencing everything for the first time, and is throwing tantrums and running around doing what they want, not listening to anyone. It was so refreshing to see, and Pinocchio just having a good time. Bradley, as the heartbroken Geppetto, just surviving, was such a heartbreaking performance. You feel for Geppetto through the whole thing. He's just trying to live his life, loses his son, and the performance by Bradley makes you feel part of Geppetto and how hard it is for him. And then Ewan McGregor as Pinocchio's cricket conscience. Sebastian was great. I loved him as the voiceover and the storyteller of this. And it was so cool because McGregor's got such a cool, calming voice that you just love to listen to. It follows many of the same plot, like the circus and Monstro, but mixes things up with the settings during World War II Italy and the fascist youth camps. So in the Disney one, for example, they go to, I think it's Pleasure Island, and all the kids are mucking about and get turned into donkeys. But for this one, it keeps very much grounded as much as you can with a living doll, and he basically goes to a youth camp and learns to become a soldier, and it was very dark in comparison, because they're basically you fight for the fatherland and you will fight for Italy, and And a lot of the film, Pinocchio doesn't care whether he dies. He dies multiple times. So he thinks war's a fun time where he won't die, he'll just take part and then go home. Having the real world connection gives the story real stakes and emotional weight. So you understand how horrible World War II was, and just throwing the characters into this situation with their stories gives all of their plots a lot more weight, and you feel for them and you worry for them. What could happen? Geppetto loses his son because of World War One, so could Pinocchio die? Could Geppetto himself die? We just don't know, because the way this story's told by Del Toro, you just don't know the overall ending could happen. Geppetto's story, from losing his son, initially being distant from Pinocchio, and then treating him like a son, is heartwarming. He grows as a character, he has his son, falls completely into the depths of despair and depression, welcomes Pinocchio in. He's very distant at first because he's like, what is this? And then slowly, like, they gain a relationship and they obviously spend the rest of their lives together until he eventually dies at the end of the film. The lessons from death hit a real chord that life is precious and shouldn't be thrown about like Pinocchio does, but eventually learns its value. So death, the lion spirit that we see, basically tells Pinocchio, you'll never die, but every time you come to the afterlife, I will put a timer on and you have to wait here, and it increases every time he dies. And as the film goes on, Pinocchio realises that he can't just keep dying over and over again and just waiting it out. He has to use the life he has to the best of his ability and not waste it, and try and live the best he can with Geppetto and not just throw his life away. So it was nice to see him learn as well. A different ending than Disney's upbeat story, sad but hopeful. So Geppetto, Sebastian and Pinocchio live out their lives together, and they all die in the end except Pinocchio, because he can't age, and they assume he'll die eventually, but he goes off into the world to experience things himself. Even though a lot of this world is full of despair and heartbreak, there are still things to cherish, like family with Geppetto and friendship with the young boy Candlewick that he meets in the youth camp. So Pinocchio can find the lovely and sweet things in life, even though all these horrible things happening. There are still things to find and enjoy in life. Actually seeing Geppetto in his life with his son Carlo, losing him in the bombing, and then building Pinocchio as a sort of replacement, you really feel and understand Geppetto. So basically we find out that the bombing of the church when Carlo died was just a mistake. It shouldn't have happened. So Carlo dies randomly and unnecessary. Geppetto has to live with that, and then being depressed for a long time, like 10 years or something, ends up building Pinocchio to try and, I don't know, fix his life, not to feel lonely. So you understand why he acts the way he acts and treats Pinocchio the way he does, because he wants him to be Carlo, but he doesn't, because Carlo was the one and only, but he's got very mixed feelings on everything. The dark themes in the retelling of Pinocchio really make it stand best, like death, losing loved ones, fascists, war, conflicts as a whole, and responsibilities in many ways. It very much basically echoes what a lot of the other retellings do, but in a much darker and down-to-earth way, so you can relate to it a bit more, I think. And then the last point was that the music and songs are good, but they're not particularly memorable. They're there, they're nice to hear, and overall they're okay, but you're not going to be remembering them after you've watched the film, compared to like the stop motion and the great story as a whole. So yeah, I love this film overall. It's such a nice retelling by Del Toro, and I think he did an awesome job with the medium of stop motion. It was so nice to watch because I love stop motion. It's such a nice way to see animation, because I feel like it takes a lot more time and effort, and you feel that on the screen, especially with a production like this. So overall, I reckon if you enjoy stop motion, Pinocchio, Del Toro as a storyteller, give this a watch and you'll enjoy it immensely, I imagine. But yeah, that's my thoughts on this film. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to keep up to date with all future episodes. Until next time, I will see you all later.